So what is it going to take to break up this union? We tried and failed with the Northern aggression. What's next? What's your first reaction with this?
Well, a couple things. We don't. Well, we don't really have a union anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. It takes two to make a union, and all the states right now are acting as one body.
Right. We have technically we have a nation now.
Yeah.
And actually, what I think we're going for is not a breaking up of the union, but a restoration
of the union as it was,
of the original union.
Yeah. She calls this Northern aggression. Usually we would say that it was federal aggression.
Yeah.
Federal aggression because the North was in Reconstruction and the 14th Amendment, which followed the Civil War. The northern states ended up being just as subject to nationalization as the southern states did.
Right. Well, and like John Ainsworth says, New York farm boys weren't going out to fight against states' rights.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, they
were fighting for state rights just as the southern people were.
Yeah, the Northerners were fighting for a preservation of the Union.
And I've got a slide for that. I wanted to bring in this here. This is the actual object of the war, and I'm not going to read all of this, but like this is, I don't know how many people actually go back and look at this, but this is...
Probably nobody.
But this is the Congressional Globe, and this was from...
What is the Congressional Globe?
1861. These are actually the proceedings of Congress.
So it's kind of like the minutes of the actual proceedings of a session of Congress.
Yeah, this is actually what happened. If you go down here, this is actually a pull from this part right here. As you can see, object of the war. Mm-hmm. So it's right there. What is the object of the war?
Talking about the Civil War.
Yeah, the Civil War. Or the war of, however you want to say it, federal aggression. Or so actually, these are actually pulled out, but, and again, I'm not going to go through all this, but this is kind of a breakdown of what that article, if you want to pause this video, right here and go back and read this part, you can. But I just wanted to pull out these things because this is important to understand. The war, what was the war not for? Well, it wasn't for oppression, it wasn't for conquest, it wasn't for subjugation, it wasn't for overthrowing or interfering with the rights of the states, and it wasn't for overthrowing or interfering with the established institutions of the state, which was slavery. So the official object of the war from Congress at this point in time, 1861, was not for overthrowing or interfering with slavery.
Which is definitely not what we're taught.
And the whole point of this is that the war was actually to bring the states back into the Union, which they were. And, using North Carolina as an example, because we're in North Carolina. North Carolina was back in the Union after the war. We were in the Union for a whole 2 years. We even voted to pass or assisted in the passing of the 13th Amendment, right, abolishing slavery.
Right, which was one of the requirements before we were able to be readmitted, quote-unquote, into the Union.
To be readmitted into the Union, but then Congress passes, or they're trying to get the 14th Amendment passed, which all the southern states voted down. Even some of the northern states eventually didn't like it either.
Well, all except for Tennessee.
Except for Tennessee. Tennessee, and it's interesting because Tennessee was not reconstructed. But what they did with this is that they put new states into place, and this is where I'm getting at, is that in order
to make sure that the 14th Amendment was ratified, the federal government put into place new states.
They put in place new states who would be loyal to them.
Right.
And I want to pick this up on this slide here, which was what we started with. I want to extend this out just a little bit so that you can see how this happened. This illustration here was originally intended just to be a very general mock-up with the way that it works. It's supposed to work, and the violation that occurred.
Sure. Okay. I mean, it's overly simplified, but
yeah, it's very simple. So it doesn't bring on like the things that Misty's talking about, and with the courts, and the things Betty's talking about with the union and stuff like that.
Deeper issues.
Yeah, these are a little deeper issues. But let me. I'm gonna show you something here. Let's review here real quick. Okay, so if it's not constitutional, right, and the government wants to create it anyway, they violate the law. They violate the foundational law, which is the Constitution. They attempt to create these laws here, and people are in compliance with that law, or people are not in compliance with that law.
Mm-hmm.
But if people remain in compliance with it, and it stands as that, okay, this is not something the government can do. This is the people have accepted this at this point, and I want to show you what happens here. Based on that one law, there are a multitude of other laws that use that one as a foundation.
Right.
And so this law uses that as a foundation. This law uses that one. This law, and so to Misty's point here, when she says, well, she's bringing in the Supreme Courts, well, and opinion, and people all have different opinions about what's constitutional.
Right.
In this particular circumstance and setup, this law, even though there are a lot of conservatives saying this one's unconstitutional, this one is, every time you see a new one, this one's unconstitutional. In reality, in this system and with these people
supporting it,
and these are no longer unconstitutional, because I'm here to tell you that this was a change in the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
With the Reconstruction Acts, Congress forced in place a new beast, a new machine.
Sure.
And this is the new way it operates. So when the Supreme Court rules on, let's say, affordable health care or Affordable Care Act or whatever it might be, when they say, yes, that's constitutional, they're basing that on this, which is basing it on this, and eventually it traces its way back to this. We are all national citizens.
But they're not wanting to go beyond that red line. I mean, they're not wanting, like, we've tried to bring this issue into the court, mm-hmm. right? And every time we try to bring up the issue of Reconstruction, which was how the 14th Amendment was ratified in the first place, mm-hmm. they don't want to go there.
No, they're dealing with the fact that this is what they consider it in law, or in the courts, is this is a presumed conclusion.
And they don't want to go down this line. They don't want to backtrack.
I want to illustrate something with this, because these people, you notice that I didn't use this people, okay? I put another people here. This is a new people, okay?
They're red people.
They're red people, and this is black people.
Cliff, that's racist.
It is kind of racist. But yeah, these are red. This is red. This is black. You use these colors here, okay?
Okay.
What these are actually two different states, okay? As you're like, what in the world is this? We think of states as, this is a state, right? Like this is
the lines.
This is the land mass. This is the state of North Carolina.
Right.
But in actuality, the state is the people. The people have particular political beliefs that belong to them, and they are in this collective, this state, this body politic, which is another word for state, body politic, to protect their rights that they want specifically. So now you can see where state rights came into being. But what Reconstruction did in the 14th Amendment is, you see these little black dots here. Mm-hmm. This was the original state. When Congress came in here, they changed who could vote, who could participate in government, and now all of a sudden, it's United States citizens living in North Carolina. These are people that were loyal to the new government that was coming in, this new national system. Mm-hmm. And so, as you can see, these red dots they're in other states as well. So these red dots, it doesn't matter if you're over here in California, you are affecting what goes on in North Carolina, because you're all the same now. Mm-hmm. Whereas this is what we're trying to get back to. We're not trying to break up a union. There's not a union now. There's two different states. There's this state of North Carolina. I'm literally speaking. There is a state of North Carolina that's composed of national U.S. citizens. Then there is the state, which we believe never was put into abeyance. Nothing ever really happened to it because it was unconstitutional. Mm-hmm. These are state citizens. These are These are going to be citizens who are loyal citizens who are loyal to North Carolina as it was under that original Constitution.
But what are those other colored dots?
Well, these are the citizens in the other states. As you can see, the colors here would, I guess, represent different rights that apply to each one. Now, obviously, you believe, well, our rights come from God. Well, to bring in Misty's points, in that everybody's opinion is different on there are, heated issues, issues like abortion and
everybody has
I mean,
different opinions. Everybody has a different interpretation of what they feel like is the right thing for them and their community.
For them and their community. So these people see this, and this gives you a freedom.
Oh, and I want to say too, this kind of goes back to your original video on what is your worldview. Because it's not just what we want and what we feel like is the right thing to do, but our foundation is the Constitution, which is what we believe, not in violation of God and God's law.
Yeah.
It's not just a willy-nilly, anything goes as long as everybody else agrees with it.
Yeah, and it's like I was saying earlier, if this were to be instituted, if this were to have been left alone and allowed to thrive at the time, I think, closer to the founding of the Constitution, we were, I believe that the people within the country were on more of a similar
separate but equal footing.
Well, no. They had a similar moral belief system.
Oh, right.
They were on a similar foundation with each other.
Yeah.
So these states originally they wouldn't be so far apart. Nowadays, if we were to institute this,
like North Carolina would be so far different than like California.
Oh, that would be a huge difference, I believe, in what we would have. But at the same time, if we had that, that's fine. Now, do we believe secession is a possibility? Where if the states got so off course, and I'm not sure exactly what that looks like. What exactly do they have to do to not be a part of the union?
But in order to secede, they'd have to be in a union to begin with.
Yeah, they would have to be in the union to begin with, and it needs to be a lawful union. We don't, and that's another thing we need to look at. Let's not pick up at a point where
let's not start now.
let's not pick up at a point that is naturally unlawful. Okay, let's go back to we have to go back to the original point. That's the only way to do it.
Pick up those constitutions and repopulate those states.
So the answer to Betty's question in what is it going to take to break up this union? We don't have a union. Let's get that union. Let's reestablish our states. Let's start participating in lawful, constitutionally founded governments by reestablishing our states, becoming state citizens again, loyal to our states
individually,
our sovereign original states, and then that gives us a legal foundation on which to rebuild. So,
right.
That's all I got.
That's good.